Welcome to the Public Voice Salon. We are an open dialogue on education, the arts, and social change. And today we're so excited to be in the home of Frank Craven on East 52nd Street and 2nd Avenue in Manhattan. Frank is somebody I've known for a while, and we wanted to get him on the show for a long time, and we're so glad he's on today because he comes from one of the great acting families of the 20th century. He is the son of John Craven and the grandson of Frank Craven, who was in Our Town, the original Thonton Wilder play on Broadway. Okay, he was also in the movie version of it. And the other day I was watching Turner Classic Movies and Our Town comes on, and I said, my God, we got to get Frank on the show. I mean, so talk, Frank, a little bit about this influence. Your grandfather's name was Frank. Then his son was named John, and now the next generation is you, Frank Craven. So what was it like growing up with two actors, your father and grandfather? In fact, in the original Our Town on Broadway, both your dad and your grandfather were in that play. How did that affect your life growing up in such a great acting family?
Well, indeed, actually, my great-grandpa was John, so it goes John Frank. And he has playbills with Joseph Jefferson and Edmund Booth. And Frank married Mary Blythe Daly, who was a suffragette, first married to Arnold Daly, that produced George Bernard Shaw. And she was cousin to Maurice Blythe, who had Lionel, Ethel, and Jack. They changed her name to Barrymore because it fit longer on the marquee. Much more theatrical.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, you know, my dad always downplayed the father's fame because my grandpa was super famous in his day. Yeah. And he wrote and directed The First Year, which is about comedy. It was a silent, then turned into a talkie. And Too Many Cooks, New Brooms, comedies of the day in the 20s and 30s, Broadway hits, The 19th Hole, after 18 holes to go at the bar. And then he went on to become a script doctor at MGM Studios, and he really helped doctor and put comedy on the scripts at a desk there. He wrote the Laurel and Hardy movies, and
which there was one very famous Laurel and Hardy movie,
Sons of the Desert. And also we got screen credit for Our Town. And he was friends with Thonton Wilder. Thornton stepped in and played stage manager for a week. It opened in 1938 and toured for 2 years to phenomenal reviews because it broke the fourth wall. And there was no props, and it was dealt with the simple things in life. As Emily says in Act 3, she says, they don't get it. She wants to come back. She dies in childbirth, right? And she's like saying, what are these people? They don't realize that it's the small things in life that are so meaningful. And indeed, every little detail you sew together, stitch by stitch, things to create the beauty of life. And so our little subtle comings and goings are what really is the major fabric of the whole mosaic of our life.
Wow. So also the other day on Turner Classics, Claudia and I, we watch Turner Classics all the time. We love old movies, and they were playing Sons of the Desert the other day. So I said, boy, and I had never really watched it. I was a kid the last time I saw it, but it really is very interesting. And they actually named the Laurel and Hardy fan club the Sons of the Desert. Was your grandfather, was he a big fan of comedy, of Laurel and Hardy?
Well, yeah, he helped make them happen. He was a comedian of his day, and he grew up with a theatrical family, and he was always clowning around and very funny. And that's it. He was a comic, comedian, actor, and popular, and wrote comedies and hits. And sure, my dad, too, was a very funny guy. He always had a very good sense of humor, punning around, joking around. And that, at the end of the day, that's what makes us happy in our pursuit of happiness, is one of the most important aspects of life. That's why people work hard, so they can go on vacation, have a good time, right?
Yeah. So I want to just stay with our town for a little bit because they had brought it back fairly recently. Paul Newman, I think, his last major role was in
the 50th anniversary.
I see. And wasn't it recently downtown in the Village again? They brought it back again?
Yeah, a few years back. It opened in 1938 and was an amazing play because, as I said, they broke the fourth wall, they didn't use props, and it was just dealing with a classic value. That's why it remains one of the most popular plays that every community theater does, or every professional theater, because it's an enduring classic dealing with moral family values and simple stuff that we tend to ignore.
Wow. So now I want to go to Barrymores because you are related to the Barrymores and
a distant cousin.
Okay. They had on the other day, again on Turner Classics, 20th Century, this incredible movie starring John Barrymore, and he plays this theatrical producer who's very histrionic, to say the least, And I'm watching Barrymore, and I'm thinking, you have a lot of that. I could see there is that Barrymore quality that you do have.
Although I don't spit out my Shakespeare, the little bit of rum and whiskey to spice it up, as John was famous for doing, like Peter O'Toole. If you sat in the front row, you go like this, and say, yeah.
So would that mean that makes you cousins with Drew Barrymore?
Well, yeah, once removed, 3 or 4 distant cousins. Let's see. Drew was daughter of Jade, who was a daughter of, I don't know if it was Lionel, Ethel, or Jack. I don't know who her mom or grandma was, but I worked with Drew and Riding in Cars with Boys. I was a couple weeks in that. I'm an actor, of course, all my life, too. I've gotten small parts in films and theater. Oh. Well, lead, off-Broadway, and didn't quite... Fame has eluded me like my parents, my dad, and Pop, and my dad was funny because he was also the pioneer lead actor in TV with the CBS series The Egg and I. That was the first live TV show in 1949, 50, 51. He was the first pioneer lead actor of television. And he said, oh, yeah, we can only run the show about 15 minutes because the lights were so hot and the sweat would be dripping off of us. And then he went on to do Ford's Theater and, One Step Beyond, Hitchcock Presents, Twilight Zones, early TV when we had really good, wholesome, moral, interesting programming instead of today's schlock full of violence, pornography, dysfunctional families, murder. God knows what's going on.
What do you say that fame has eluded you? Now, what do you think about the state of fame in America today? Do you think there's a kind of shallowness that we elevate certain people to be stars who maybe don't deserve to be famous? Or, if you look at the Kardashians, even to a certain extent, extent.
Darling, you must be in my TV show, Sweetie Pie, yeah. Oh, man, I've seen people off-Broadway recite Shakespeare up and down, and brilliant actors, and these no talent who go to the proper pool parties get over because the producer said, darling, we must put you on my show. So what? In a given moment, fame, it's overrated. And in the old days, actors were persona non grata. They were no actors allowed at inns and everything because they were left holding the bag because the producer would make off. They'd be these wandering troops, and they would cross-dress, or they'd put on blackface, or they'd sing, they'd goof off, play around, and, in the burlesque era, vaudeville era, they were regarded as charlatans, not serious people. They were entertaining, they were fun, but, oh, you're an actor? Oh. That's what the Players Club was made, as like a sanctuary where actors could sleep and feel there was a safe house for them that were respected. Nowadays, of course, actors, you're an actor, wow. But you know what? To be an actor is tough because you got to learn lines. And you got to not only learn them, you got to make them real. You got to really engage and bring out a playwright's intention and take it to the next level and find your reality, get into your groove and get your character going and create reality out of the written word and memorize it. And, if you're a good actor, you'll memorize your scene partner's lines and the whole script. You get a sense of the story and just carry it through versus just, learn your lines and be on your way.
Well, my dad was an actor when he was a young man, as I was telling you. Over lunch, we had a delicious lunch here, which you served a healthy lunch from the upstate farm in the Catskills that you had.
Right, good organic tomatoes and fresh harvest, nothing like real food.
We were across the street from Mimi's Italian restaurant, but I think we should get 4 stars right here. Right here, Frank. This is what you had.
Actually, across the street downstairs is a Gulaglu Turkish bakery. I have 2 paintings hanging in there.
Well, we have to go take a look at some point. Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. I do painting as a therapeutic thing. I love, like Anthony Quinn, he's an interesting artist. A lot of actors, they enjoy painting. It's a visual thing. You have a creative outlet, in between jobs or whatever. And you just, but actually I feel that I don't do art does me. I might be dressed in a suit suddenly in front of a canvas with a wet paintbrush. I'm saying, oh shit, I gotta get going, but I something impulses me at 4 a.m, whatever, and I have to paint. Like these paintings here, you see this is like the yin-yang, negative, positive, energy flow. There's another one called Qualis Saint-Germain, the elements. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's interesting. Now, I was saying about my dad because he was an actor when he was a young man, and he was in the play where Warren Beatty was discovered for Hollywood by Joshua Logan. My dad was not discovered, unfortunately, but he still says to this day I could have been a contender. He's 75 years old.
Well, there's always a place in the business for everyone, no matter how old. I love Warren and Bulworth. That was an original thing, really funny, and it was all in verse. I've written a few plays in verse. I like verse.
I love Bulworth. And in fact, I've actually shown that to my students. I'm a teacher. I teach English, and I teach, from a more, let's say, outside-the-box way. I teach writing at the college level.
Oh, wonderful.
And I've been screening Bulworth now for the past 10 years.
Oh, wow.
It's like a seminal text in my, visual text in my classroom because I think it's a great film to educate people about the political situation in our country in a way that's very entertaining. My students love it. Most of them have never seen the film. I teach in mostly, working class, poor kids. I'm teaching now at Boricua College in Washington Heights and NJCU in Jersey City. And I put on Bulworth, and it's like the students love it. And you know who's in that? Amiri Baraka, the radical poet, formerly Leroy Jones, So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that film.
Speaking of history, what's the hottest ticket on Broadway nowadays? Hamilton. And it's all in hip-hop and verse, too. And like the popularity of Molière's classic, Les Miserables. That's another song in verse. And Molière wrote in verse, Goethe, a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of great playwrights and people write in poetic verse, and it's a beautiful old art form to catch the rhyme and make something clever flow in a natural way, but without really being rhymey or doggerel, just naturally hooking into a beat that flows. And it's like, you start feeling, oh man, that's cool.
Well, yeah, and Bulworth, Beatty, he gets into this whole rap thing, and he's rapping about the domination of politics by big money, and how we need socialized medicine. I think that's the first time I ever heard the word socialism in a mainstream Hollywood movie was in Bulworth. And Paul Sorvino plays a great role as the insurance company guy, and he's sort of the nemesis of Beatty. But that's great. So we have similar taste in movies. You and I also were both friends with Joe Franklin.
Right.
Maybe we could say a little something about Joe, who's now gone about 2 years, and he gave us a big boost, Claudia and I, when we filmed him, and he made us believe in ourselves. He made us believe that we could go for our dreams. What was your relationship with Joe?
Well, I've been on his show a number of times over the years because, of course, he was a big nostalgia buff. Yeah. But the reason he invited me on board is because I'm also a playwright, and I have a number of plays I staged, equity approved, off Broadway, and and I talk about it. We get on board, yeah, so I don't know, and I have my father and grandfather's great-grandpa's collection of theatrical memorabilia. We always talked about putting together a museum of tracing comedy, the history of comedy, or a theatrical memorabilia museum per se. And, he has a massive collection of stuff, as I do, not only from my ancestors, but me too, like him. People come to me. I have a TV show, Friday nights at 9:30, What's Ailing Here in America. Been on since 1998 every Friday. And so a lot of times, like Joe, people come to me with their books that they sign or their CD they want to promote. And so, we got a major collection of nostalgia, and that was always interesting. But Joe was a darling man. He had a great line that I love. He was so sweet. People always loved to go to his cluttered office and feel great and promise his showbiz. And he said, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful. Claudia and I were watching last night Gene Hackman. There was an old Gene Hackman movie from 1970 called I Never Sang for My Father. Beautiful movie about the difficulty of the father-son relationship, and very humane, very humanizing, And, it makes you realize the power of movies, that they can go deeper and be more substantive. But thinking about the sons and daughters of famous people, there's a whole history of that too. You turned out pretty good, my friend. I mean, some of them, it's difficulty. What's it like following in the footsteps of famous parents?
Well, my dad was always a gentleman. This is his ring, and I always remember him. He was always downplaying his father's fame, and as he told me, when I first hit the scene from Spain, I grew up in Barcelona because Mom was working for Robert Kennedy, eschewing on the anti-Vietnam ticket in the Democratic Party. And next thing you know, boom, he was shot in '68, same year that Martin Luther King was shot. So unfortunately, she said, oh my God, and so they pack up everything, and we moved from the top of Ireland to the bottom of Portugal and fell over Spain. My dad became director in the American Institute of the Theater, fell in love with the 300-seat theater and staged plays for the English community. So I was always working in plays there and doing other things with him. But even still, when I got back to town, he put me right into HP's studio. I said, Dad, I know to act, you know that. You're my acting teacher. Come on. And he said, no, training. So I spent 2 years in HP's studio learning scene study, acting technique with Edward Morehouse, Uda Hagen, Buck Heller was a jazz teacher, Arabella and Young was a singing coach, and all that stuff. So the training served me well, and it's good. He said, you got to learn his craft. But he'd take me to Broadway shows, and we go backstage, and I remember Lauren Bacall kissing me and saying, Johnny boy, this is your son. Oh, how handsome. And also, Biff Liv was my godfather. He took me to a lot of shows. He was president of the William Morris Agency, and a lot of friends in the business when I was a younger man. But, I always, growing up in Franco's fascist Spain, I was proud to protest and declare my beliefs in human rights and social justice versus keep it quiet. Because in a dictatorship, the police can beat you up. Yeah. And in Franco Spain, it was scary. You couldn't even look at them cross-eyed. They'd take you in. They were the law. And like nowadays, we see fascism with the police with their machine guns looking at you like, justice is suddenly it's getting more and more fascistic. Yeah. But anyway, I was proud when Nixon had to step down. Yeah. And so Dad always said to me, who had to navigate through the McCarthy era, he said, son, wear your politics in your back pocket. When you go to the voting booth, you draw the curtain, vote for who you want. But, you just try to, keep it cool. Yeah. And unfortunately, no, I haven't kept it cool. I kept it loud and strong. I'm known for a play, actually, I staged called Authority versus Majority that I did in '82 as a fundraiser for Amnesty International and Human Rights, and then in '89 again. And it actually won in '92 at the Houston Film Festival the best screenplay out of 3,500 entries. So if you got an extra $1 million, we can make the movie. I don't know. It's a spoof on Latin American dictatorships. But anyway, I've always sort of been a human rights, eco rights, social rights activist, and believe in the and that kind of thing. And the ability to protest it as a demos kratos in the Greek etymological tracing of the word, demos, people, kratos, power. We need to take our power back and be a democracy and participate and actually get involved. Otherwise, we surrender to an authority versus majority that's always going to try to extract money and keep us in perpetual slavery, which is the history of the world, unfortunately.
What's amazing about you, Frank, is that, you have the acting ability, you have the chops, you have the skills, you have the oratorical panache, you have the Barrymore background and all that, and you have political consciousness, which is so rare today amongst actors. When I look at the acting scene, maybe it's just besides you, who else is out there who really is an actor who has the moral integrity about, their politics is good and strong. Sean Penn would be a good example of someone like that.
He ran a camp in Haiti, and actually, Clinton Foundation, they raised millions of dollars for Haiti, and look at it, still a disaster. Where'd that money go? I give you $10,000, I'm sure you go to Haiti and fix the plumbing. Give the Clinton Foundation $10 million, and there's still, what's going on there? Hello, I don't know. Unfortunately, I want to give a shout out, if I may. I find spirituality very important. I learned from the Native people. This is a Native American drum, and that's where I grounded myself and learned a conscientiousness and from our tribal roots. And right now the Native people are gathering in North Dakota for Mother Earth to protect her from the pipeline like never before. All the tribes are gathering. Hi, Washte. That's Lakota for a salute to all my relations.
Claudia is from Bogota, Colombia. She also has indigenous in her background, We like to celebrate that. I think in our culture now, we're getting overly corporatized in terms of the politics. We're trying with the show to be a non-corporatized show, as I think you're doing as well. But thinking about political hope, Occupy Wall Street made people very hopeful. And, what was going on with Occupy? Were you down at Occupy?
Well, of course, it started, I have a painting to it. I hung up in New Jersey at the Mora Museum of Russian Art. It's called Tahrir Square, January 25th to February 11th. Actually, it started in, was it Tunisia? Yeah, the Arab Spring, then into Egypt. In 2011, they ousted Mubarak, who was a dictator of, I think, 40 years. They stood their ground. And then on September 17, 2011, we occupied Wall Street. And on the heels of the Indignados movement in Spain, that was all of a sudden the public plazas we're not going to be submissive to authority. We pay your taxes. You got to answer to us. And that's what happened. Where suddenly there was a wake-up call worldwide, because it was in preparation of the 2012 end of the Mayan calendar, the end of the world scenario. Well, it's just a shifting of consciousness and a wake-up that we are, all of us, divine spiritual masters, as Buddha realized, as Jesus realized, as any guru or my master teacher will help you recognize that you are your own yogi. You have to find your own mastery, and the jihad, which is the famous holy war in Muslim belief, is actually the holy war of one's own control of one's own appetite, one's own morality, one's own thinking, one's own lust, or money, greed, the 7 deadly sins. When you master yourself, then the world starts mastering, and that's what being a good Muslim or being a good Jew or being a good Christian is, when you are actually working with principles of respect for life. And even if you're an atheist, you don't believe in God, you believe in the golden rule. You write a passage, you go your business, I'll go mine, I respect you, you respect me, and we're not going to mess with each other, and that's fundamental. It's a universal moral concept.
You know, when you think about Broadway today and the arts and Hollywood and the corporate control of all this, you know, you told me a great story once about how you and your dad and Joe Papp were trying to protect these great theaters that were being destroyed, the Morosco Theater.
Right.
They were coming in with the bulldozers, and you guys were actually holding hands against the bulldozers. That's also part of this corporatization process where everything is about money, money, money. You know, we had Judith Malina as a guest on our show.
It was in 1983.
Tell about that story. Yeah.
Well, nothing. We just stood our ground. Of course, God bless us, we weren't going to be like Rachel Corrie at 23 years old, who lost her life standing her ground in defense of the Palestinian home that was bulldozed over. But the bulldozers were coming. We were a bunch of actors and people. My dad had opened and played in that, theater where you could hear a pin drop. Precious jewels of American theater bulldozed over for this big, massive skyscraper that doesn't have balconies overlooking Times Square. Hello?
What's it called now?
The Marriott Hotel. That has its lobby on the 8th floor. Why didn't they put the lobby on the 8th floor and leave the theaters, and have ourselves, anyway, whatever.
We had as a guest on our show Judith Malina, who was the founder of the Living Theater. She was about as radical as they come, And I said to Judith, what do you think of Broadway, right? And she looked at me and she said, I haven't been to a Broadway play in 30 years.
Oh, no.
And I said, why not? She said, it just doesn't interest me. So what is going on with Broadway? Let's hear from the son and grandson of the great Frank and John Craven. You're holding up this great tradition. You're related to the Barrymores. What would John Barrymore do today if he looked at Broadway today?
Well, as I understand, there's 17 shows now slated to get into, waiting in line. And we have many theaters on Broadway that's humming. And I go a lot thanks to Equity. They give you, they paper the house, in previews or when the show's closing, so they give you freebies. Or there's a thing called Rush tickets where you can go there at the last moment, ask for Rush, and they give you a discount. Or you can do the lottery, which is another way, 2 hours before curtain, and hopefully you get you can get the front row seat, like at Wicked and a few other shows that allow you to get in for $25 versus $125 for the front row. And, this way maybe you say hi to the stage manager and they know you.
Make sure.
In the old days, Equity card just got you in, but nowadays it's, anyway. But
hi to the stage manager who your grandfather played in our town.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in a given moment, New York City is a tough town because there's so much going on. It's hard to pin down a control of the scene. Yeah. And also then you got, off-Broadway, and that's a contract through Equity deciding over up to 99 to 500 seats is off-Broadway. After that, it's Broadway, meaning the household of a few thousand seats, or off-Broadway means up to 99 seats. And it's smaller theater, but it doesn't mean to say it's off-Broadway physically. It just means the contractual status for Equity members, which is the union of actors, and how they should be paid, at least their travel expenses and whatnot. But there's some marvelous shows going on off-Broadway that are small theater, black box shows, where people put their heart and soul into it. And then there's some great shows that have a big big budget that are just sort of like put you to sleep because of blah, 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 blah. And or somehow there's not action on stage or passion amongst the actors. I'll find that the understudy, when it's his chance to get on stage, they'll sing brighter and crispier and with more passion. Or like last night I saw a rock and roll concert. I prefer flamenco folk guitar. I grew up in Spain, but I saw a rock and roll concert. Of course, the band from Nashville, when the kids were far more than the rock and rollers because they were just passionate, and when a person and an actor is totally into his line or his character or playing the part, you feel it, it transmit, and that's the magic of theater, where we open up our collective heart and everyone is on board, fascinated for a couple hours, and it's like church or anything. It's like suddenly everyone's heart is open and we're just following the storyline, and that's why a good movie on screen or on TV is great. Maybe it'll make you cry, but you forget about it. But in theater, emotions, and it's shared collectively for about an hour or two, and the people are laughing, clapping, crying, screaming, booing, or hopefully laughing and clapping or feeling emotion. And that stays with you 10, 20, 30 years from now. They'll say, oh, I remember that play. Oh, God, I'll never forget it. Because it was an experience. That's the magic of theater.
I think this is the best discourse we've gotten, certainly on this show, about the power of theater and what it does psychologically and the potentiality of art to transform.
Experience.
Aristotle had talked about the catharsis, this idea that a tragedy, if you're watching a drama and you're aroused by it, that maybe you get weepy or you cry, that's a purgation of emotions. It's a purgation. You're purging that sorrow and that pity inside of you. You actually feel better. There's a psychoanalytic uplift that comes from seeing a good play. We had this discussion with my students, and the other day we're talking in class about movies that make people cry, and I had to tell them it's a good thing when you cry at a play or a movie, because it means that it's actually reaching you in some way.
And you might be crying over the bust-up of your girlfriend or the death of your dog or whatever, but actually it's the actors on stage going through their drama, but you're letting out tears that the fluids need to flow and emotions need to flow. We're energy, and we want to be in constant motion, whether we like it or not. And sitting in a play, or uptight, and wherever, it can be boring, but there's no such thing as boredom when you're really enlightened and connected. Everything's fascinating, everything's very beautiful and has a purpose. And when the mind is engaged into whatever the actor on stage is truly feeling, you'll feel it. It transmits naturally. And that's the beauty of live theater. That's why people are particular about their audience, because we're not just our physical being that we're fascinated with. There's an aura around us, an energetic field that comprises our memories, our energies, and our connections that we naturally feel. So that's why snobby rich people will just go to exclusive places, and they just want the billionaires just to be amongst their own golf club set. They have this snobby attitude, and because they don't want to be with the riffraff. And that's why I don't think billionaires represent us, like this disastrous political election that's happening between Trump and Hillary. These people are multi-billionaires, and so in my mind they've just X'd themselves out of the representing us. I would like to advocate Jill Stein of the Green Party. She's a real woman. She who's made what Bernie was famous or popular for, old and young, real issues. Regardless of what Bernie says, I'm sure the government said, don't forget RFK, JFK. It's our revolution. No, it's not. Our revolution is the Occupy movement, and real issues like penal code reform, eco-friendly energy versus fossil fuel industry, no torture, no war, etc. Tax the rich, forgive the student debt with the public treasury. It's all artificial anyway. It's so absurd. How are we getting out of a multi-trillion-dollar debt? Impossible. So it's all paper. It used to be based on gold, then gross national product. Now it's just based on future debt. And the world is waking up to its power and to the fact that we have the power to manifest whatever it is we think. So we have to be positive and think about what you want versus what you don't want, because it's so easy to criticize, but it just keeps tail spinning into a negative critical circumstance versus saying, like, you aim high, you get high, you aim low, you get low.
Wow. I'm going to let you rest your voice a little bit, because that was quite an oration there, and I want to just inject a little ideas and discourse here about, again, my background. And I just finished writing a play, one-man show called How to Be an Actor in Your Own Life. And I think you exemplify that. And it talks a lot about agency. This idea of having agency means to be an actor in your own life, to not be stuck, to be able to move through the world, to be able to make choices and act on them. And you exemplify that very well, Frank. My grandmother, as I started to tell you over lunch, was brought to America by a famous actress named Blanche Walsh, who was the Meryl Streep of her time. She was like the American Sarah Bernhardt. And she was actually the original advocate of an American national theater. The idea of a national theater, having a chain of theaters nationwide where you would see serious plays, contemporary and classic, at a low cost for the masses. That idea never came to pass yet. There have been attempts in the 20th century. You had the ANTA, the American National Theater Academy, which brought out the Don Quixote, Man of La Mancha. That was one of those. But you had the theater.
I got my equity card with John Raitt.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was in Corning Summer Theater dressing him and playing the muleteer and a guard in that show.
That's beautiful. You had that. You had Orson Welles at the Mercury Theater during the Federal Theater Project.
Right.
Hallie Flanagan was head of that. Again, it lasted a couple of years and it faded out. But the original advocate was this actress, Blanche Walsh, who actually saved my grandmother. She was in an orphanage in London, and this great actress, in an act of empathy, brings her to New York from London, saves her life, basically. She died young in 1915, Blanche Walsh, but the seeds that she planted about this idea, she called it the National Liberal Theater of America, are still, I think, it's out there. It's a potentiality that we could still come to pass. And I think you exemplify that deeper integrity, that art. So I want to just encourage you. I want to encourage you.
That's why I'm a playwright, too, because I can't wait around to get cast. I'll put my own show together and make it happen off Broadway, which you can go to Lincoln Center Library and see a few of my shows. And getting back to the idea of being famous, or my dad being famous, or grandpa, no, Dad always said, you got to stand on your two legs, son. He shouldn't introduce me to agents or casting or celebrities, but it's like, I got to learn the lines, and I got to get there and be on time and be punctual and perform regardless. I can't, in fact, he was cast in our town, and Jed Harris insisted he play the boy at 21. He was perfect. He got good reviews, but my grandpa was famous, slated to play the lead, said, no, let him play Howie Newsom or the milkman, John's too green to play. It wasn't nepotism, quite the opposite, but the director, Jed Harris, said, no, John's playing the boy, and Dad went on to star in Two on an Island and various other Broadway shows, and he got glowing reviews in our town. And it's like, yeah, you got to stand on your 2 feet, and then regardless of who your history or your ancestors are, you got to learn the lines and show up and be the part.
Yes.
And as I say, I've found myself an agent is crucial, or a manager who's really got a finger on the pulse of the casting scene and can recommend you. Now, that's where I fell short, because I've had a few agents, and in Barcelona, I was more of a celebrity, working a lot all the time, never went to castings, always went to jobs, and was a minor celebrity. But in this town, where it's like a bunch of sharks, and just very quick and quick-paced, I didn't really sign on to an agency. I've had a few friends who were agents, but I'm like Spanish. I'll bring them a bottle of wine and all this stuff and be all friendly, and next thing you know, I'm bribing them, and they're looking at me like, who is this guy? He's kissing me on the cheek. You know, in Spain it's very polite to kiss a lady on the cheek when you say hello, and you want to smell the perfume. It's the custom.
Right.
And, compliment a girl. And here it's like, oh, that's what are you, harassing me? It's a different culture here. But that's okay. I love America. It's my country, my town, but I don't know, in a given moment. But that's all right. In a given moment, everyone's acting is a tough business anyway, even if you're a celebrity, because you always are looking for work. The project goes up and down. Next thing you know, the film is wrapped, and you're out looking. You got to see where your next script is, or what should I do would be a good vehicle for me, or looking for. Hopefully, the chemistry's right, and all the forces come together. And so, or the show closes. It has its run. Then next, and all your team players, your best of friends, everyone's off and running, and you're no longer an acting troupe anymore.
Well, I actually might be reaching out to you because I have to memorize the lines of this play that I wrote, and that's my next step, is to actually try to memorize. I've never done anything like this before. I've never had a one-man show. Have you thought about having a one-man show? You seem like you'd have a lot of material for that.
Yeah, well, when I directed Close Make the Man All in Verse, I had two companies, and so having written it and then directed it and listening to rehearsal day and night with two companies, I knew every word backwards and forwards. It was also in verse, so it was like a song that I heard so many times throughout 3 or 4 weeks rehearsal by two companies. I recited the whole show for a nursing home as an exercise, as a one-man show, playing all the parts. And it was really funny. I actually had fun doing it, and they were thrilled,
You had a captive audience.
Well, yeah, the old folks in their wheelchairs, that's a good place to rehearse your show.
It was a kind thing to do.
Homes, yeah, they love entertainment. Why not? But my friends have said, why don't I do this Our Town monologue? Or I've been invited, here, like the historical treasures. My grandpa was an iconic thing, and also I was written up in the paper with a different historical society. So I should do this one-man monologue about our town, but I didn't get around to that.
Okay. Well, let's bring it up to the present day, which you today were online at the Apollo Theater for their amateur hour. Okay. It's going to be like, what's going on with the Apollo Theater?
Oh, man. They were wrapped around the block. I never wanted to do amateur hour because I'm really a professional. Like I replaced Pete Seeger at the UN, and I've done a lot of gigs and everything, so I'm going to cheat. Yes. But I have a song I'm going to share with you that's been burning a hole in me because of
burning. Is there a pun there? Bernie or bust? Okay.
Yeah. Well, when they marched off stage, they said no. When he endorsed Hillary, like no, excuse me, no. So I wrote a song for them, and I'm so anxious to share this with everybody that I decided to get up early and just go to the amateur thing, and hopefully they'll like it, and I hope everyone likes it. I put it on my show wherever I sing it, and I just have fun with it. So if you'll bear with me, I'll sing you this song, okay? Now, the first most important song any guitar does here is it a guitar and tune. I grew up in Spain, and everyone plays. Let me say something about the guitar or any musical instrument. It's not difficult to play. It's difficult to like what you're playing. People put it up and put it down, but music is the universal language. And anyone can play a few chords. Most songs wrap around about 3 chords, and no big deal. We're burning a bust, the Occupy Trust. We deal fair and square and expect our share, not the greed of the billionaire. We've taken a stand, our hats in hand. The delegates are broke, democracy's a joke. Voting is rigged by a computer jig. Hey, we're burning a bust, the apple pie crust. We deal fair and square and expect our share, not the greed of the billionaire. The Mother Earth's cracked, mind nuke-droned and fracked. Islam is attacked by a super pact, anxious for money, not milk and honey, in a world that's gray and always gunning to pay. GMO dummy, hey, we're Bernie a bust, the Occupy Trust. We deal fair and square and expect our share, not the greed of the billionaire. We all must agree to the truth decree. Justice stops the crime. Trust us, cops, this time. As Black Lives Matter and our hearts are shattered, yet we carry on and sing this song. Hey, we're Bernie a bust, the apple pie crust. We deal fair and square and expect our share, not the greed of the billionaire.
Beautiful. Wow. Unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, world premiere on the Public Voice Salon. You heard it. Frank Craven. This is wonderful, Frank. I love talking to you, man. On the air, off the air. We have to deepen our friendship, I think.
Okay.
Now, I think being here in your beautiful home, it's wonderful, packed, filled with nostalgia and wonderful tidbits here. Everywhere you look, there's something interesting now.
And here's a painting I recently did that's funny. Apropos of saying the billionaires don't represent us. This is like the Mexican flag or the Italian flag. In Mexico, they got the eagle with a serpent. Well, I got this is called the El Gavazzo legalizando grasa di topo, or buitre legalizando grasa de rata, which is Spanish for vulture legalizing rat fat. So we have Berlusconi up here and Bloomberg down here, and there's little fat rats that are like, in public servants pretending to serve us. It's a saturation point when you're a multi-billionaire. Hello, I don't know. I think it's a moral crime, actually. And you're disqualified from representing us. The workforce, or the unemployed, or the immigrant community, or prisoners, or homeless, or students, or the people. The people. You want to be a person, you want to represent our needs. And they say, well, we got to be rich to be in power. No, I think if you're rich, you can go on your yacht and go golfing.
Well, from American history, I learned that our country was founded to break away from a tyranny, to break away from royalty, and all that. But what do you think of Trump? I mean, Trump has been compared to Berlusconi in some way.
Nah, it makes me laugh. When he first was running, the guy broke out laughing, and he still makes me laugh. He's an entertainer. He's a charlatan. He's a joke. Come on.
Does he really want to be president?
Oh, well, of course he was going to shake up the Republican Party, make sure Hill gets in. But now he probably has to be president because his operations manager says, sir, they're not renewing their leases. All his residents in the luxury buildings are Muslims, these rich sheiks from Arabi who can afford $4,000 or $5,000 a month, these luxury cookie-cutter skyscrapers and no balconies and no community room. When he first was running, I went to the various Trump buildings and said, I want to see Mr. Trump, and the community said, no community room. Maybe if you put on a show said you're hired, but you're fired. This guy is like twisted, and Vanity Fair had an article when Ivana was divorcing him. He used to read Hitler's papers in bed. He walks around thinking, he's into the master race and slavery. He's a knucklehead. He's crazy. And he's an entertainer, so it's funny. We love to talk about him and laugh at him. And he seems to be a maverick But, I don't think they'll let him near Washington. He doesn't know how to read the teleprompter. He can't follow orders. You think the military going to have him as commander-in-chief? No way.
I want people to know that Frank is not reading a teleprompter right now.
No,
speak spontaneously. We're real people here.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jill Stein is a real woman who stands for everything that Bernie was popular for. Yeah. Penal code reform, forgive the debt, eco-friendly versus fossil fuel industry for solutions to pollutions. Real deal issues, helping the planet in the people, find justice, tax the rich. All these things that are serious and need to be addressed, and that's what change is about, and political awareness. And if we surrender our power, it's not, we can't vote the lesser of two evils. I'm sorry, that formula is completely ridiculous. Why waste your vote on voting for evil, whether it's good or bad? There is no, you drink poison or you don't. I'm sorry, evil's evil. And obviously, A, if you're a billionaire, you're out of the running. B, if you're like the Clinton Foundation, look at Haiti. Look at it. Or is the world safer? Is she top diplomat? She's an arms dealer. Hello, look at Syria, Libya, and the rest of it. She's pocketing that money and selling fracking and all these. These deals have to go through, and it's like destroying Mother Earth. Excuse me. Put the pieces of the puzzle together, and you'll see that this is a very scary situation. That obviously, I think Biden will probably take it, or maybe, who knows, maybe Bernie might save the day, or someone like Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party. But America has to wake up to its power and know that we are the 99%, and we have issues that need to be addressed. That's what politics and change is supposedly about.
So you're very much into politics, I see that. And what has that, in terms of your acting, has you think it gotten in the way, maybe, your politics, in terms of getting acting gigs?
Absolutely. As my dad said, son, come on. Most people are conservative, and the rich people who really run the show would rather be richer, the more the merrier. That's the thing about money, the more. But I say it's a commodity that's meant to be circulated so that we don't have it's good. Okay, money makes money. The more you have, your portfolio increases, and money makes money. But in a given moment, there's a saturation point. How many golf courses do you need to own, or how many yachts? Come on, let's circulate it. And so, whatever. But I have to stay in integrity with my spirituality and die in peace and meet the Creator, as we all do. And all we can take with us is that will be given away. And our generosity is what generates a good vibe and a good memory to not only ourselves and our community and friends, but to Creator and to God and our whole soul's journey, because we're actually spiritual beings borrowing a body in this process called life. And it's important that we recognize that spirit is what moves everything. That's what the joy of life, la joie de vivre. The difference between animate and inanimate, I'll put a worm in your hand or a dead twig. They might look the same, but the dead twig spirit is gone. And the little spirit's moving. That's invisible and it's intangible. But that's what moves life. And that's what we have to recognize, that invisible, intangible connection that I think science community has said, to Greg Braden and various other evolved scientists, that spirituality and science have married, because science is empirical evidence of the tangible, but they recognize that in the neutrino around the proton and electron circulating is the bonding nexus that creates the molecular structure of all of life, that is a moving energetic flow. And that invisible, intangible aspect is, as Lynn Taggart wrote, the field. That's the connecting force, or as the Chinese call it, qi, or the Indians say pranayama, or the Lakota people say wanatanka, the great mystery. The connecting force of all being is what makes us feel valuable and validated.
Well, I don't understand everything of what you just said, but I have a feeling you might be a genius, or you might be crazy. I don't know. One of the two.
I prefer crazy. Everyone calls me crazy. I don't mind.
You do have a guru aspect to you. I mean, I could picture you maybe having more religion, starting some sort of, like, not a real, I'm not saying cult, but I'm just saying like a religious, you have a deep spiritual quality to you, Frank. And I think maybe, you ever think of maybe outside of New York? Because New York is getting, again, so corporatized corporatized, so cutthroat. Have you thought about maybe places like Portland or, other places that might be less, less corporatized? Or
Well, I grew up in Barcelona, a very cosmopolitan city, and I speak 5 languages because as a kid, our neighbors are Morocco, Portugal, France, and Italy versus New Jersey and Connecticut. And we also have this universal cosmic sensitivity, and I've read books that are out there, the Pleiadian Agenda, Orion, Sirians, Hathors, and I've gone to I've traveled a lot, and I've recognized the university and the ancestral and ancient connection with the fact that the universe works in harmonious connection and peace, and nature works in perfect divine order, but we humans judge each other and we create war. God has created paradise with flowers and rainbows and butterflies, and we create war and strife and judgment and all this crap that it does nothing except disturb our peace, because we're material-minded beings, and in reality we're spiritual beings. Now, I do give readings. I'm psychic. I'm intuitive. I've studied a lot of spiritual paranormal books and ufology and all kinds of stuff that fascinated me. Psychic sciences are our map of our stars, and our palmistry indicates things that have been proven in every culture throughout history. And so it's obvious to me what seems spooky to other people, and that's why I scare people. Or I'm sort of spiritual minded, but I definitely feel very peaceful. And that's what keeps me going, because you have to have a sense of humor. Despite all this malevolent, materialistic evil that in the cesspool that we live in, that is so driven for a physical, financial gain in an egotistical world.
Yeah. I think we're almost out of time, about 2 minutes left, but you mentioned humor. I look over there and I see a letter that W.C. Fields wrote a letter to your mom. Let's take a look at this letter. Oh, your grandmother. Okay.
Yeah, she lived in Beverly Hills. So this is W.C. Fields kissing Mae West. And so he says, dear sweet person, how nice a lady like you could be married to an old reprobate like Craven is beyond my comprehension. Come to think of it, I am twice as bad as he is, so I shouldn't have brought him into this diatribe. Now, if you'll find contrition enough in your heart to take into consideration senility, loss of memory, demon room, Eskimo trouble, and several of the baser vices, you'll forgive me for my reminiscences. I can't forgive myself, so I'm craving your indulgence. My sincere, most humble apologies, your little lambkins, Willie Fields. A love letter.
Love letter from W.C. Fields to your grandmother. It doesn't get any better, folks. It does not get any better. With Frank Craven on East 52nd Street in New York City, one of the great actors who has yet to be discovered for big-time fame. I think it's coming soon, Frank.
Hallelujah.
I think this Apollo gig is going to shoot you right to fame.
Nah, I was backstage maitre d' at Cannes Film, but I've done a lot of work throughout my life.
You want to get to your work.
I've avoided the fame thing, but
Humble
I love fame. No, we must be
guy.
humble to God, Creator, the universe. I've worked with many stars,
Yes.
but you don't want to.
You don't brag.
No, I can't. We can't.
A sincere man. We love you, Frank, very much, okay?
Thank you.
And we want to wish you good luck with your acting, with your activism, everything that you do, your art. You're a beautiful man. And you got to teach me how to memorize those lines for my play, too.
Oh, well, don't worry about it. Just embrace the character and just dig into it, and repeat. And just keep reading them and repeating them and get the flow of the character, and then the lines will come easy.
Thank you, Frank. We love you, Frank.
Thank you, man. Thank you, John Braden. God bless you, lad.
Claudia. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia, for